go away when you win the promotion. Come home and sometimes my dishes are still in the sink, you know? And we still have these life things that we deal with. There's a lot of sacrifices that come with becoming really skilled in a certain area.
Can you please say that again?
The sacrifice is necessary. It teaches you discipline. My mom always told me, always prepare to win, but never expect to win.
About to grace us, whether extraordinary 10x skill. 10x badass. Yeah, I'm after what I want.
Hello and welcome to the Elena Cardone Show. But yes, you're right. I'm not Elena Cardone. This is Sherry Hamilton, and so gratefully filling in for Elena Cardone today. We have in our studio the unbelievable Miss North Carolina, Taylor Loyd, with us today. Welcome, Taylor.
So happy to see you.
So glad to be here. And as I told Taylor earlier, I apologize, I am not Elena Cardone, but I'm going to do my best as the Chief Operating Officer of Cardone Enterprises to make this an incredibly amazing show so that everybody watching and listening can hear your story, because I've been doing some reading.
Awesome.
And it's amazing. Amazing what you've done.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, I saw this beautiful photo of you. You're 2 years old and you're wearing a Miss America sash and a crown. Talk to me about your origin of your story.
Yeah, so I never saw myself as a pageant girl growing up, even though at 2 months old, that was kind of one of the first images that the first costumes, if you will, that my parents put me in on Halloween. Somebody had given them a Princess Build-A-Bear when I was born, and they very last minute decided to go to a Halloween party for the kids, and my mom pulled out some ribbon and put the Build-A-Bear costume on me as an infant and wrote Miss America 2024 on the piece of ribbon for me to let go as a Miss America. And so it was very, very prophetic for me winning Miss North Carolina 2023, meaning that I would compete at Miss America 2024. And so that was always kind of a dream of mine that I never thought would happen. I thought it was just kind of something funny, and it was something that my parents shared because my mom was a local competitor, my dad was a local volunteer, and so they met because my dad became my mom's chaperone at a lot of events, and suddenly, somehow, some way, you know, love was in the air, and 30 years later, I ended up holding the same local title that my mom did, and that was my very first local title competing for Miss North Carolina. I was able to win Miss North Carolina with that title on my first attempt. And so that was really, really special. There was a little bit of a trepidation of, okay, I want to wait until I know that I'm ready to go to Miss America. But if I wait until I know that I'm ready, but it doesn't happen for me in that year, am I going to feel discouraged that, you know, that train had kind of gone or whatever? But I always kind of looking back through my childhood, looking at that photo, it used to be, oh, that's so funny that they would have me do that when I would never in a million years see myself as somebody that could do that. And then it became, you know what, maybe this is something that I should actually try. And those years just kind of lined up. And while I did not walk away as Miss America, I had the experience of a lifetime at Miss America and was able to make the top 10 and win the talent award. And so I couldn't have asked for anything more than that.
Wow. I cannot imagine this. Okay, so many things to follow up on here. So your mom was a competitor?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my gosh, and she was Miss North Carolina?
She was Miss Statesville. So she had the same local title that I did, because in the Miss America opportunity, you have to win a local competition to qualify for state. And so she jokes, you know, she didn't win Miss North Carolina, but she did get a husband out of it. So, you know, I always like to say growing up, I saw what Miss America did for my parents in terms of their relationship and bringing them together and helping my mom connect with people to get her first job in the corporate world. And so that was always how I saw it. It wasn't about, oh, just the girls and the crowns and the dresses and the makeup. It was, these are my mom's best friends. These are, you know, people that I have idolized throughout my life, watching the VCR tapes of Miss North Carolina and Miss America.
Right.
And so it kind of had a different meaning to me to be able to compete, because that was a part of my family history, not just, you know, it wasn't just self-serving. It was, I wanted to write my own chapter in that family history book.
Wow. And how did you see that helping your mom and forming her life and her career?
Yeah, well, she was a first generation college student. And so the scholarships that she won by being Miss Statesville, that was really important for her.
Wow.
And so she says that she, in the Statesville community in North Carolina, she had an appearance at Belk, which is a big department store in the South for the listeners who aren't
I'm
familiar.
familiar. Oh, yes.
And so she, one of her majors was fashion merchandising. And so she had an event at this Belk in Statesville. And then after her year, she was applying for jobs, and something to the effect of they weren't really hiring that position that she was looking for, but the manager remembered her and thought, hey, this girl was Miss Statesville. She did a really nice job. She was a really lovely person. And you know what? We're going to hire her for this position because we see the value that this has had on her life.
Wow.
And so it's incredible the doors that open because of a title. And it's so much more than what a lot of people on the outside think that it is. And so like I was saying before the interview, one of my mentors, who's a former Miss North Carolina, said to me, you know, Taylor, out of your Miss North Carolina, Miss America experience, lean into every opportunity, you know, say yes to as much as you can without, you know, burning yourself out, obviously. And so running towards every opportunity that you're given, that's how people's lives are changed through this. It's not just showing up to the appearance, smiling, waving, taking pictures. It's connecting with people. It is allowing that domino effect, that butterfly effect to happen so that not only your life has changed, but you might look back in 20, 30 years and you see the effect that you've had on somebody else who's been able to do something really remarkable.
Right. Incredible. And what was it like as you were coming up and, you know, going through your life then? And you didn't really have it in the beginning, this dream, but when did that happen for you? And when did you say, oh, wow, I'm going to do something about this?
Well, I've always been the quirky kid, the nerdy kid. And that was something that, like, you know, I didn't have a lot of friends in middle school. You know, I feel like a lot of people look back on their preteen selves and they think, oh, I wasn't that cool. But, you know, I've always been really, really a nerd. And so I always thought of pageant girls as women that were just perfect and that I could never be that. But a way that I was always able to express myself was through music and the arts. And so I come from a very musical family. My parents had me in dance lessons at 2 and voice lessons at 4. And even though my very first voice recital, I had to have my mom hold the microphone for me as I faced the back of the auditorium because I was so scared, I really found my voice through the performing arts. And so I thought, you know, I see these women that have titles and they're able to perform so much more than I am just as a kid in theater and choir. And I was rejected from my choir when I auditioned as a preteen. And I thought, you know, okay, I really care about music. How can I hone my skill but get more performance exposure? So after begging my parents at age 13, they finally let me do a pageant. But it was, they were very serious about the fact that they weren't just gonna, you know, buy a dress for me to walk on stage and just gallop around. It was, okay, if this is something that you care about doing, it can be a one-time thing if that's what you want, but you need to understand the value in what you are committing yourself to. And I think that's with anything, whether it's pageants or sports or business, that if you find something that you can commit yourself to, you really need to pour yourself into it and let the fruits of that really flourish. And so really in the spirit of saying yes to everything that comes your way, I tried a couple of pageants and I, you know, wasn't perfect, but I got my start and competed in the Miss North Carolina's teen program eventually and found that was really, I really kind of had more of a knack for that. And as a subsidiary of Miss America. And so I still never really saw myself as somebody that could be Miss America, but I knew, okay, I have this talent and I like to talk, so maybe that'll get me somewhere. And so people say that I kind of just came out of nowhere when I was a teen. And my first year in teen, it took me a couple years to get on the big stage. But at age 15, I was second runner-up and I won talent and evening gown and onstage question that year. And that was when I really realized, actually, Taylor, this is something that you might actually be good at.
Wow.
And so it was years of just, hey, I'm just doing this because it could be fortuitous for me, until realizing actually it's not just the things that I'm learning along the way. I actually might be able to win and succeed in a more tangible way. And I think that that's the delineation that is really important for women in pageants, or really anyone in any industry to realize, is that you might go into something focused on one goal, right? You might go into a certain sector of business because you know, it might be, you know, we have certain opportunities for you there, a certain one big goal, like the crown in pageants. But for me, it was, okay, I want this to be about personal development. And so if you focus on that journey and the growth and the learning that you're doing there, and not just the destination of that one big goal, the one big goal may or may not happen, but you will gain so much more in the process by having invested yourself and saying, it doesn't matter what happens 30 steps from now, but if I focus on the one thing that's right in front of me and I put my all into that, then maybe 30 steps from now, I actually will be able to win.
Right. Were you scared that first pageant? Was it something that you had to really get over to make that first step? Because sometimes that's what keeps people from doing these things, is they're like, oh my gosh, won't happen, can't happen, can I? How did you navigate that?
I had horrible stage fright for so many years. And I think that comes from when I auditioned for my school choir and I got rejected. When I auditioned for my middle school talent show and I got rejected. And in my heart, I knew, okay, I really feel like I have something that I can offer, but the world is telling me no. When do you know when to stop and when to keep going? And so pageantry was an ability for me to kind of start a new leaf in something that I kind of had a comfortability in the realm of the performing arts. And so I just kind of, I'm not the type of person that really gets nervous anymore, but when I started, it was, okay, I'm a nobody. What do I have to lose?
Right.
You know, if you've never done it before, what do you have to lose, right? I mean, there's a lot to win, but if you start from zero, you can only go up from there.
Oh, that is a great viewpoint, because if you never start, you've already lost because you've given up. It's such a key point. Really good advice. So then what was it like when you were crowned Miss North Carolina?
It's kind of crazy. I look back at the video and I barely recognize the girl that I was then, because there has been so much growth since then. And this year really has been a lot of the journey. And this is my last month or so as Miss North Carolina. And so I think about all of the connections that I've made, and I really felt like I was so ready to be Miss North Carolina then. But if I was competing again now, oh my gosh, you know, I feel so much more prepared in everything in my life now. It was something that I always wanted to happen. And the closer I got to it, the more I felt like maybe it could happen. It's very rare for somebody to win a state title on their first try. Usually it takes you a couple years to really get the knack and get the rhythm. And I had taken a couple years off of competing in pageants, but those couple of years off, I was focusing on other things that I knew would serve me a greater purpose when I came back. And so my mom always told me, always prepare to win, but never expect to win. And so I really tried to apply that to everything in my life, because you want to be prepared when somebody says yes, but you don't want to be so over prepared that when somebody says no, that you're broken, you're shattered, you don't know how to pick yourself up. And I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen to my friends. I've seen it happen to other girls in pageantry and outside of pageantry. But I knew that if the crown was put on my head, that I was ready to do the job. But if it wasn't, then it was okay. And I had proven to myself that I was capable of it, whether or not it actually happened.
Amazing. Do you find that the most important person to appease or to satisfy is yourself in these things? Because I can imagine pageants are amazing because you have to be judged by other people. And so are you your own toughest judge? I
think so. And I'm pretty type A. But I had this moment when I got back from Miss America and I was standing by my coffee machine, and I think I was on the phone, or maybe it was just an internal dialogue or a monologue, talking to myself, talking to my cat. But I remember thinking, it's very freeing to compete in something where you are judged so intensely by people that you don't know. Because they're people that you don't know that are judging you, but that means that you get to define the narrative, right? You get to create the person that you want to be and exemplify that onto them. And so I found it to be that I judge myself a little bit less, and I focus less on how other people judge me, because I found contentment in how I live my life, and knowing that if I'm making the right choices and I am focusing on diving into those things that are building me up into the best person that I can be, that's okay, that I don't have to focus on the tiny little minutia elements of how other people might be judging me, because I have no control over it. Pageants have taught me that you literally have no control over how other people might perceive you. And so trying to judge myself less and perceive myself more, I think has been really important for me. Is the more I know myself wholly and fully, the more I can allow myself to be fully known and fully loved by others.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And I can only imagine all of the women out there and all of the young ladies out there that need to hear that right now, it can be a very tough atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Social media can be brutal.
It is.
School can be brutal. Listen, job interviews and life and working can be brutal. And this is what people are doing all day long, is as long as you're working for someone, as long as you're trying to be in the crowd, you are being judged. So what would you say to those young ladies or those women who are trying to do well in others' eyes?
Yeah. Firstly, we're all trying to figure it out. I think it doesn't matter what age you are. We're all on this treadmill of life, if you will. And so I think that it's about focusing on the step that's in front of you. And it's not always about the thing that's far and away, all the way out here. But if you're focusing on the small goals that you have in front of you, and you can become satisfied with one step up at a time, it's a little bit easier every single day to know that you're moving towards that big goal. Or maybe you don't have a big goal and you have a lot of small goals, but allowing yourself to just take things one step at a time, one breath at a time, and know your circle. I had a mentor tell me once that your circle should be a dot, meaning that the people that you trust really intensely should be such a small circle that it's really just a dot. And those are the people that can tell you the hard truths, that can tell you when you need to pick yourself up or when you just need to, figure it out. And those are the people that can support you. And I think that when we scale down, not thinking of our circle as our giant social network on Instagram or Facebook, and we think it more of who were the people that if I had an emergency in the middle of the night that I could call and they would come and help me. Those are the people that help you make it those small steps one at a time, that you can trust to tell you those hard truths. And then you can take some of that judgment off of yourself and know that the people that love you, they're not judging you, they're loving you. And love is hard, and tough love is especially hard, but it's important and it's needed to help us get to where we want to be.
So true. And what do you do if you find you have the wrong person in your dot?
Yeah, I think that it reveals itself, but it's about having the courage to create the space. I'm one of these people that I'm not very confrontational. And so when I've been in situations where I realize, okay, somebody might not be the best for me anymore, we might have outgrown each other, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partner or whatever else it may be, understanding who is maybe being an energy vampire on your life, who is taking more than they are giving. You're not supporting each other equally anymore. I think that just allowing distance to naturally create itself is how I have, chosen to deal with some of those situations. I think other people that might be more confrontational might step up and say, you know what, I don't think this friendship is serving me anymore, and, love ya, but I just don't know if this is the best thing for us. That might be how other people deal with things, and that works for them. But for me, I think that I'm a believer in letting the universe tell me what it needs to tell me and create the canyons that it needs to create. And I don't push too hard on what God and the universe tell me is right, I guess.
Right. I understand. And so if you find somebody who's in that position right now, and they have someone who is not facilitating them in a good way, you know, it's not just that someone's not telling you something that you want to hear, because as you mentioned, sometimes the people you love have to tell you what you don't want to hear.
Yes.
But these people that are, you know, stifled or suffocated or feeling, you know, invalidated, how do they just have other plans or figure out a way to let that space happen?
I think having boundaries is really important. And setting boundaries early on in your relationships, I think, is important for people to know your patterns and know, okay, this is an area where I'm just not going to delve into. And, you know, that might mean that some of your friendships might be more surface level than others, right? But sometimes we need those that, you know, it's nice to just have a friend that you catch up with once in a while. And so I think that having the people around you know, okay, here's things that I'm not okay with, here's things that I am okay with in a friendship, especially if you are very busy all the time. I feel really lucky that my friends are very understanding of the fact that my job this year as Miss North Carolina, I might not be able to see them as much as I have been in the past, but I know that they're there. They know that I'm there. They might know that, you know, as I am venturing across the state and in different parts of the country, that I might not be able to always give them everything that I was able to maybe last year, but they know that I'm still there for them. And if they called me in the middle of the night, that I would come and help them out, because I'm not working in the middle of the night, of course.
Right.
So I think it is important to have those boundaries so the people around you know the expectations for what the relationship is.
Right. So important. And what don't people know about competitions like Miss North Carolina and Miss America? You know, we see the lights and the gorgeous girls. And what don't people know that you would like for them to know?
Okay, so before I started competing, kind of how I mentioned, I saw everybody in pageants as perfect. But when I started to compete, I realized that we're all just people. We're all just people. And so I think that in our different spheres as well, we see our peers or the people that have achieved something that we would like to as perfect. And I think about the girl that I was even a year and a half ago thinking, oh my gosh, all of these girls that are state title holders, they're perfect. They must have perfect lives. And at our workshop weekend for Miss North Carolina, for the potential for the girls that will be competing for my job, I told them, you know, your problems don't go away when you win a title. Your problems don't go away when you win the promotion. Sometimes you end up with different problems. I come home and sometimes my dishes are still in the sink, you know, and we still have these life things that we deal with. And so really breaking down that piece of it and allowing, I think that also allows people to realize that it's a method of empowerment. I think a lot of people think that it's objectifying, you know, there's a lot of stereotypes about pageant women.
Right.
My best friend that I lived with all 4 years of undergrad, she is, you know, in law school. She is one of the has probably the highest GPA of anybody that I know. And so, but you look at a crown on our heads and you think, oh, they're probably, you know, whatever you think about pageant girls. But we're really, we have to be really dedicated in the way that an athlete is when they're going to the Super Bowl or the Olympics. But you're not just focusing on one part of the sport, you're focusing on all of these different elements. You have to be so well-rounded.
Right.
And so I think that when we think about women's empowerment, that it's so important to think about how pageantry really can empower women, not just to earn scholarship money, not just to meet friends, but if you feel empowered by putting on, you know, a thick pair of fake eyelashes and a bedazzled gown, then let that be what empowers you, and let's support each other as women. That's what's important. And so I really think that the more we realize that about everything in this world, really, if it's something that empowers you, then run towards it. And if it's not, then respect the fact that other people feel empowered by the things they feel empowered by.
That's true. So is it a very empowering environment? Because sometimes you would think, oh my gosh, it must be very competitive. But do you make friends? Is it?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, I met one of my best friends. She'll be the maid of honor in my wedding one day. And so we competed together when my first year in teen. I guess that was 2017, and we've been best friends. You know, some of my other closest friends that I will also probably be in my wedding one day, I've met through pageants. And I saw the same with my mom, you know, looking at her wedding pictures, right? And seeing all of her best friends, each and every one of them are people that she met and forged relationships with through pageantry.
Wow.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize. But it's in the way that these are the people that understand. They're the people that they have experienced it. They know, you know, the trials and the tribulations of it. And so while it certainly can be competitive in the heat of the moment, it also makes me think about a moment backstage that I had at Miss North Carolina this past year when they were about to call out the winner. So the top 5 was standing in the wings, and I was standing next to one of my friends that I competed with in teen, and we had told each other all week, like, we want to make top 5 together. Like, we want to do this together. Even if neither of us wins, if one of us wins, we want to make it up to the very top together. And we're standing there, and I'm overthinking about my onstage question because I had listened to the other girls say their onstage questions, and I thought, oh my God, I got in my head, and they seemed so professional, and I was one of the youngest ones in the top 5, and I thought, oh, maybe I just blew it. And she could read on my face what I was thinking about. And there was no more competition after that. They were about to call out the winner, and she goes, Taylor, I see what you're doing. I see you getting in your own head. Stop it. You've won the pageant. And I was like, what are you talking about? They haven't called out the winner yet. Like, are you crazy? Like, no, I haven't won the pageant. Like, maybe you won the pageant. She was like, no, Taylor, you already won the pageant. It doesn't matter if you said something ridiculous, which you didn't. You sounded really smart. It doesn't matter if you had fallen on your face, which you didn't. But I know, I feel it in my bones. Like, this is for you. This moment is yours. And I thought, I felt uncomfortable. I was like, no, like, don't tell me that. I don't want, I mean, we're competing against, we're friends, but we're competing against each other. I don't want you to think that did I do something? I'm continuing to overthink, right? She's like, Taylor, no, like, this moment is yours. Like, go take it, right? It's your time. It's your time.
Wow.
And I think that is a really beautiful moment that I always think about when I doubt myself, and I have gone through my year. I've thought, when we think about, oh, the world is judging us, right? The only people that I've really wanted to make proud are the women that I competed with, because any one of them could have done my job. Any one of them would have done the job differently, but anybody can do the job, right? But it's about if it's your moment. And so it was hard for me to accept that somebody else saw that in me in that moment, that wasn't a panel of judges, but rather somebody I was competing with. But I go back to that and I think about it as, okay, you know, even if we are competing against each other for the job of a lifetime, we can still support each other and recognize when it might be somebody's moment.
Wow. I have goosebumps when you said that. I could totally feel how that must have felt. And then you were announced.
Yes. And I was like, oh, I guess she was right. And she was the first person that ran and gave me a hug. You can see it in the video. It's really funny. But, you know, at Miss America too, you know, there were moments when I knew and I recognized within myself, like, there's something special about Maddie, you know, the woman that ended up winning. And I adore her. She's so awesome. And I think that that's an important life lesson that pageantry can teach you. I think other things can teach it to you as well. But knowing when it might be your moment and sitting in that, but also knowing when you have worked so hard and you can be so proud of yourself and know that you are capable and you're prepared. But also knowing when it's somebody else's time. And that doesn't mean that it's not your time. It just means that your time is somewhere else. There's another door that's opening for you. And that's a beautiful thing.
It is very beautiful and brilliant. And it's one of the things actually in our enterprise that we teach is that it's not that it's your loss if someone else wins. Mm-hmm. The more of us who win, the better for all of us. Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful lesson right there. Thank you for that. Did you have some advice for parents?
For parents?
For parents, because parents have a very difficult job right now. And you know, as a young lady who came up, you had a dream, your parents were super supportive and helped you to realize that dream. And I'm sure there was something that really contributed to your success by having such support.
Yeah.
But are there some words that you might have for parents who are dealing with young ladies or even young men right now that you might want to convey?
I think know your kids well enough to know when to push them and when to let them fly. My parents are great because they, whether in pageants or just in life, they've always said, you make your own mistakes, you make your own choices, and we'll support you 100% no matter what you decide to do, and we'll defend you no matter what happens. And so I feel like my parents really allowed me to make all of my own decisions, in the pageant world especially, and I feel like it's also probably very similar in the sports world or any endeavor. If you're working on something, a parent might have a lot of ideas about how you should do this, how you should do your hair, what suit you should wear to the interview, what job you should apply for, what you should major in college. But knowing your kid well enough to say the difference between, hey, I think that you have a gift in this area and I want to push you towards this, and knowing when to say, look, my kid does not want to do it this way. I think always ask them first and then provide critique or feedback. Because I think as kids, we always want to please our parents, right?
Sure.
We always want to make them feel like, okay, I'm proud of my kid. But when every single time my parents have asked me first, what do you want to do? How do you want to do this? What do you want to sing? What do you want to wear? And I said, okay, well, blah, 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 blah. Then I say, okay, and I really want your honest opinion. Sometimes knowing the difference between if somebody wants your honest feedback and critique and just knowing when to say, okay, I support you. I support you. Because there was certainly a lot of that in my childhood. I think that balance is important. I think about when I was in middle school and I was auditioning for a part of some kind, and I decided to sing some ridiculous song and my choreography was a mess, and my parents were like, Taylor, are you really gonna do this? Like, are you really gonna do this? And I was like, yeah, it's cool. People are gonna think that I'm cool. Wasn't the best. I did end up placing in that talent show, but they kind of knew when to hold back a little bit when they knew I had made up my mind. And I'm also pretty strong-willed in a way. But I
can pick that up from you.
I think ambition and strong-willedness kind of go together. But for parents to know your kids well enough to know when to push, when to hold off, when to say, I'm proud of you, and when to say, okay, awesome, let's go.
Such great advice. It's such a brilliant way to approach anything. You know, I mean, an employee or a spouse or a child, right? Just to consult that person's willingness and that person's involvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you are full of really good advice, let me
you.
tell you. Do you have a daily success routine that you can share?
Coffee first, always. I think I do like a routine, but the thing about being Miss North Carolina is every single day is different. So it's been kind of difficult for me to have a set routine of get up at this time, make my coffee at this time, get dressed at this time, work out at this time, because every day is just very different.
Right.
But having things that I can rely on, having people that make me feel secure, I think that that's really important, and having a sense of routine that provides stability, even if everything out here is going crazy. Having self-mantras to say to yourself, I think is important. I think I love workout classes. It's a way for me to have a way to kind of unplug my phone, be totally unplugged from the world, and focus on myself, and finding places where I can meditate in that way. So for me, that's being outside, that's cooking, that's going to the gym, and that's spending time with my loved ones. And I think that those are the things that provide me the ability to recharge and be the most successful. It feels very simple, but the more I chase goals, the more I realize I really need that sense of stillness and meditation in order to be my best self, in order to run towards my goals with no abandon.
Very good advice. I wanted to ask you about your singing.
Yes.
So you are apparently an amazing classical singer, right?
I am a classical singer, yes.
And you're studying that at school as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How did you become this incredible vocalist?
Well, I was joking when we were walking up, and I was saying, well, you know, sacrifice some of your social life. You know, there's a lot of sacrifices that come with becoming really skilled in a certain area.
Can you please say that again?
There are a lot of sacrifices you have to make to be skilled in a certain area. Doesn't matter if it's opera, if it's sports. You look at the most successful people in the world, and they've made a lot of sacrifices. They've made a lot of sacrifices. It is not easy. And even if it's something that you are only pursuing for a short time or for your entire life, the sacrifice is necessary. It teaches you discipline. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just it's a requirement, really. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, actually, and we listened to a lot of old school musical theater, like The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins and things like that. And I spent a lot of time with them because my brother spent a lot of time in the hospital as a kid. He was in a really traumatic accident, and we found that music was really helpful to him through his recovery. And he also loves old musicals as well. That's something that we're able to share. And so I kind of found that singing became an emotional outlet for me. And as I had, you know, those moments of denial when I was, you know, a preteen and not getting into the chorus, not getting into the talent show, I started looking at different areas of music that I could, you know, try out. And I found that I kind of had a knack for the more classical sound that I had first heard on, you know, VCR tapes as a kid of Julie Andrews. And so I had a free ticket to a rehearsal to see the Magic Flute at the Charlotte Opera in North Carolina. And we're sitting up in the nosebleeds, and I lean over to my mom and I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
I had never been to an opera before. I don't know why I thought, oh, I got denied from the talent show and now I want to be an opera singer. But there was something about it that was so magical to me. And so as a wonderful parent that my mom is, she looked on that opera company's website, found that they had a youth program that could connect us with a voice teacher. We went to a voice teacher, and I was turning 13, and she was like, she might be a little young, because one thing a lot of people don't know about classical music training is that you can't start it when you're too young, in the same way that, you know, you don't want a 12-year-old to be lifting 500-pound, you know, barbells, because it can injure you in the same way that singing at a really high level can injure you. So she said, okay, I'll take a listen to what she sounds like, and if she sounds like her voice is mature enough, we can start working. And so I started working with her and just kind of never looked back, and found that I had so many incredible performance opportunities, and it became a way for me to express myself when, regardless of what was happening with my brother's health conditions, or, you know, what I was dealing with socially at school and being a nerd and, you know, not really knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up and any of these things. But that's been the constant for me. Music has always been the constant. And so finding an area of music that I've really been able to excel in has been extremely gratifying for me. It's a really beautiful art form. It's a very academic art form. A lot of time in the practice rooms, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been a real gift to really work on and hone my craft in that way.
So amazing. And music is therapeutic.
Very.
Absolutely. So I understand how it could have played a role. I understand that you started a healing program. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So as I began my pageant journey, I realized that I had a community service project that I had the ability to really broaden it. So I was a Girl Scout forever. And so I started a Girl Scout project when I was really little, where I was collecting music and art supplies for the hospital that my brother had been treated at. And then I realized, okay, how do I make this bigger? And the awesome thing about being a pageant title holder is that when you walk into a room, people pay attention to you. And that is something that I was like, okay, I can really broaden this, and people will care. People will pay attention.
That's very powerful.
Yes. Yeah. It was something that I didn't really realize was part of what came with wearing a crown. But of course, if somebody walks in the room wearing a crown, you're like, I kind of want to hear what she has to say.
Must be important.
Yeah. And sometimes it's people wanting to hear you fail, and other times it's people they're just curious. And so I, as a young pageant title holder, thought, okay, I can use this platform to make a greater difference. So in 2018, I incorporated as a nonprofit. I was able to go to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the North Carolina Arts Advocacy Organization. And I'm actually going to be one of their keynote speakers next week, which is really full circle for me to experience that. And so I've been able to work with a lot of legislators on improving arts budgeting because it is so important. I always like to say that we don't know what doors are open if we don't know the doors are there, especially for youth. And so we see things on TV or on social media or TikTok, but there's so many other things that are out there that somebody out there is going to be really, really good at this thing. But if nobody even tells you that it exists, then how are you going to know that this could be the thing that really sets your soul on fire?
It's so true. And it is such an important thing to learn discipline at and skill, and you can feel proud of yourself. Art is an amazing thing. Well done on doing that. I'm sure that you have a lot of business tips as you're kind of going through all of your tenure as Miss North Carolina. What would be your top 3?
Okay, I schedule everything in my Google Calendar. Maybe you're an Outlook person, maybe you're a Google person, maybe you're an Apple person, but I have a separate calendar for everything that I do. So if I have an event, it's color-coded a certain way. If I have an appointment, it's color-coded a certain way. I have, the drive time or distance that it takes me to get there. I factor it in so I can make the most out of every minute in my day, including rest, including when I'm having lunch, including when I'm catching up with my friends. I know exactly when I can take a breather because I've scheduled out everything. And that might be stressful for some people. I recognize that. But for me, being somebody that has ADHD, it's really helpful for me to see my entire day mapped out, every single thing that I'm doing. And so then if I'm at an event in the middle of nowhere with no cell service, I can still pull out my calendar on my phone and I can say, okay, here, you said you wanted me here at this time. You wanted me to wear this type of outfit. You wanted me to bring this many autograph cards and bring my music to sing on a flash drive. And so I can have that kind of ability to really breathe in my moments of freedom and also give my 150% in the moments of work because everything is written out and I don't have to worry about it.
Brilliant. Do you have plans now going forward? Because I think I need to hire you.
Well, like I said, I try to lean into every opportunity as much as I can. And so as I am finishing up my last couple classes at UNC, I am really looking at a lot of different opportunities because, there's a great big world out there. And the awesome thing about being Miss North Carolina is that I have made so many connections and met so many people. But that's also a hard thing too, because it's like, oh my gosh, okay, I could do this or I could do this or I could do this. And it's, what do they call it? The paradox of choice, where there's so many choices out there that it's almost overwhelming.
Right.
But it's much better than only having one option, than only having one path. And so saying yes to as much as possible and opening yourself up to the world and trying to see every door that is there has really allowed me to understand what my strengths are and strengths that I didn't even know that existed before this year. And that's been like really freeing and empowering for me to learn about myself in a totally different way. But yes, I would totally work for you.
Fantastic. Okay, so biggest tip, you got to have everything in the calendar.
Everything on the calendar,
Yeah.
always.
Okay.
And
I
color
agree.
coded. It's got to be color coded.
I love the color coding.
Yep. And the best thing about the Google Calendar is that you can like put in your PDF. You can put in like all of these details, and you can share it with other people. And they
Speaking
can
my
see,
language right now.
They can see when you're blocked off. So
Love
the
language.
people in my life know when they can give me a phone call because they know when I'm at an event, and it's the best thing ever.
I absolutely agree with you. Birds of a feather on that one. Let me ask you this one. It's kind of a fun one because it gets you creating. But if you could have coffee with one person, you know, there's one person that you would be like, man, if I could just have coffee and talk to this person, who would that be?
See, these are the hardest questions for me. Like,
Yeah.
you can ask me how to solve world hunger, and I'm like, yeah.
Oh,
But you ask me,
how do you solve world hunger?
Well, that would be like a part 2 interview, right?
Okay, part 2. Part 2.
But,
Stay tuned.
But I think, oh gosh, is it like living or dead? Like, can be anybody?
Anyone.
Oh my gosh. See, the hard thing is I feel like there's so much to learn from anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, everybody has something that you can learn from them. Oh my gosh.
Maybe that's the answer.
I think that is the answer. I think that it's like, who do I feel like very connected to in a certain moment? There's not like a end all be all answer for who I'd want to have dinner with or who I'd want to have coffee with. I think it's, you know, what is the message that I need, right? And every person has something in them to offer, whether we realize it or not. I have a list in my phone of things that I have heard that have stuck with me. And the first one, the reason why I started this list, I was like at Nordstrom like 7 years ago. And I heard this lady on the phone, and she was talking about something, and she was really, really frustrated. And she was like, you know what? I just need to observe, not absorb. And I was like, I don't even know who this lady is, but I have this nugget of information that is going to stick with me forever, to observe and not absorb. I can see everything that's going on, but I'm not going to let it affect me, right? Like, it's things like that that lie inside of each one of us, and we just have to give other people the chance to share their story and give them the space to get to the point where they feel comfortable doing so. Because everybody has a story to tell, a message to impart, a nugget of wisdom that could stick with somebody forever and ever and ever, and you might not ever know it. That lady might never know who I am, but she's had an impact on my life by that one little line that I heard her say in the Nordstrom.
Brilliant. That is so true. Taylor, thank you for being here on this show. Thank you so much for sharing your story and all your nuggets of wisdom.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you were here, and I know that everybody listening will be too.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and thank you, everybody, for having me.
Great having you. Do great. I know you will.
Thank you.
Okay, can't wait to see what's next for Taylor. We know it's going to be amazing.
Thank you.